When's the last time you really took the time to consider what it is that you want? Today, we're learning from the original boss mom herself, Dana Malstaff. She's going to share with us her filter on how she makes decisions, the same technique she teaches to all of her coaching students. Plus, you are going to hear me give Dana my very own secret confession. This episode was so fun to record. There may have been wine, so stick around. You're listening to Free Mama Radio, where we believe you can have both a successful business and show up as the mom you want to be. I'm your host, Lauren Golden, a mom who built a full-time income working part-time hours. Now, I help other moms like you learn how to work from home on your own terms, take control of your schedule, and make more money so you can live a totally awesome, guilt-free life. I am on a mission to make sure that no mother has to choose between family and financial stability. So if you've been wondering, can I really have it all? This podcast will give you the answers. Dana Malstaff launched the Boss Mom brand with her first book, Boss Mom, The Ultimate Guide to Raising a Business and Nurturing Your Family Like a Pro, which is like the best, most appropriate title for a book in this world ever. That was back in 2015. That started an international movement. I love that. The Boss Moms Facebook community has organically grown to over 40,000 members, and there are now Boss Mom local meetups in over 80 cities. Dana believes that we need to show our children that doing what we love can be financially viable. What an impactful thing to think about our responsibility to our parents as business owners, right?
I know. And we just hit 50,000 in our group.
So. Yes. There's always updated stats with high achievers.
We grow 100 people a day.
So beautiful. Okay. Yeah. Dana, you've impacted a lot of people, myself being one of those people. How does that feel? Like back in 2014, did you have any idea that this was your future?
No. In fact, I don't think I ever had any idea that kids would be a part of what my business was. You know, I always knew I wanted to have kids. I'm one of those people that I'm not really a kid person. I'll be perfectly honest. Like I was the youngest for most of my life, then acquired a younger stepbrother later on, but was old enough. We were both old enough. I never babysat. I never was around babies. I'm allergic to all pets. So I never had pets. So really, like not really a whole lot of nurturing experience at all. Yeah. So I wasn't a massive kid person, but I knew it was like my vocation. If I'm an intelligent person who wants to contribute to the world and I can have babies, then I don't know why. I just always grew up with that feeling like, then I need to have, and I had an older brother and I loved that dynamic. So I was like, I want to have 2 kids and that's about all I could probably handle, which is funny for now when we're all stuck at home. Cause I joke that like, I always knew I was going to have a business, have a career, have these things. So in my mind, I always knew like, I'm just going to make enough money to have other people help me raise my children. And then now they're like, no, we'd like you to 100% raise your children. And I was like, that was not the deal.
Yeah, you're alone now, by the way.
That was not the contract that we bound here.
I don't know if you know Emily Hirsch, but she was just a guest on the podcast and she was talking about the same thing. She's like, listen, I am good at outsourcing. I created balance and coronavirus took my balance away. So you are not the only person.
Yeah, I have a client who she's like, dust. There's a lot of dust in my house. Oh. She's like, there's just a lot of things that I had gotten used to other people doing. Yeah. And I was like, I know. And you feel bad, like we should all be self-sustainable, you know? Right. But I think as a business owner, that is not true. That is not true at all. Like we shouldn't try to be all things because that's why we end up crying in the bathroom on the floor with our bottle of wine.
I know, I always have, right? I always say, I believe that we can have it all, but it is not doing it all that gets us there. I actually try to do as little as possible and let everybody else help me with everything else.
Well, and I just interviewed one of my good friends, Mike Kim, on the Boss Mom podcast a couple hours before this, talking about copywriting. And he works with the Story Brand team and everything. Like he's really amazing. We were chatting about what our mission is and what a real foundational story is. And he mentioned, Boss Mom is about helping moms start businesses. And I was like, actually, that's not really what it's about. I was like, what I really care most about is that women say yes too much. Like we honestly, in a yearning to do it all, or maybe in our head thinking we're supposed to, and we're good women of integrity, so we've got to do these things. Like it's my job, even though nobody told you it was your job. we say yes to way too many things in a yearning to be helpful and impactful. And in doing so, we end up feeling like we're failing at a lot of things. We end up feeling like maybe we're not enough. We end up feeling like maybe we're not as valuable as we hoped we would be, because we spread ourselves so thin that people don't give us the gratitude that we would lie to ourselves to say we don't need, but we all do. Right. And so ultimately, the reason why we use the term decision support and the entire Boss Mom community is meant to be a think tank is to help us make better decisions, is to help somebody say, that's a terrible idea, and I don't think you should do all three of those things. To give us permission to say no and to teach us how to say no to the right things so that we say yes to the right things. Ultimately, of all the things we've done at Boss Mom, that is, everything is born out of that desire. Everything we build and put together. That's why our society membership, we're building out quizzes that are decision support quizzes. Should I write that book? Should I buy this thing? Should I pursue this thing? Is this the right kind of idea?
Right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things I talk about. I think one of the reasons I've done so much relatively quickly is because I only did one thing at a time. I wasn't trying to write a book and have a baby and start a business and start this and join a whatever. It was I did one thing, and then when it was either done or self-sustaining, then I would switch my attention. So I love hearing this in your own words. I really do, because I don't know that I even quite understood what you felt like your mission was with these 50,000 women who are listening to you. I love that you're explaining that. And right before we started recording, you were actually telling me that you've been going through this process within your own business. How has that been for you, both as the CEO of this internationally recognized brand, but also the mindset and the emotion of you've created all of these things, and how do you choose what to let go and what to pursue?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I don't think everybody in Boss Mom knows that's my mission, because it's taken 6 years to really let that bubble up.
Yeah.
I've always known subconsciously, I've always worked from that because that's the world I want to live in.
Right.
But I'm not sure I had those words 6 years ago. And when every year when I decide new things, I get to know myself, my business, my community, what I like and don't like better. In the very, very beginning, people are always telling me, why aren't you on the speaking circuit more? Why aren't you on this? Why aren't you traveling all the time? Why don't you have all these other? And I just said, I don't want to. I like being home. I'm one of those people that I like where I live. I I do things that I enjoy. I like my own bed. I have a purple bed and it makes me very happy. I have a piano that I play
very
terribly.
on brand.
Yeah, it is so on brand. I know, right? And I actually interviewed the guys who did their marketing, the Harmon brothers. I was on their podcast. It's called Poop to Gold, by the way. Best podcast name ever.
That's awesome.
But I mean, just for everybody to know, my products getting better, my mission getting better, my execution getting better, that is all a maturing, which naturally happens. Our kids are completely selfish, not because they mean to be, but because they don't know how not to be. We are like that in our businesses and most things in the beginning of anything. We are immature, which just means we don't know the effect of what we do on ourselves, on our family, on anything like that. So the goal, I think, is to mature as your business and you get older so that you make better decisions. And a lot of maturity happens when we prune, I think. So all the 7-figure business owners, they let go of things, they prune things, right? So I was not the best at saying no. I did do too many. There were some things I already knew I didn't want to do, like the travel part. But as far as I totally wrote too many books too fast. Now we have what we call, I call them focus milestones, which is I'm not allowed to write the next book, which is going to be called The Boss Mom Advantage. And I'm super pumped about it. I'm not allowed to write it until our society hits $1 million. Right? Which if we do our job as a $1 million month, reoccurring, it hitting $100,000 a month reoccurring is basically what our goal is. Will most likely happen if we're still continuing to hit our goals. I'm not allowed to start writing a book until May of next year. If I want to write it sooner, then I better work harder at making this society work. But I have to do that because I naturally want to jump in and do a ton of things. So it's to me, every exercise has to be in this conscious pruning. So I'm reading Essentialism right now to help me do that because I don't naturally do it. I naturally want to say yes to everything.
It sounds like it requires a lot of self-discipline. And so what have you used, now you're reading this book, so obviously you're learning and whatnot, but I'm assuming like mentors in your own business have maybe played a role in this too. How do you stay accountable? How do you have the self-discipline to not just start working on your book?
Okay, so there's a couple things. One, I'm a total extrovert, so I have people. So Amy on my team is my operations director. It's her job to say no as a first line of defense, right? To say, no, that's a terrible idea, because I've had people on my team that just did things I said. And then afterwards I was like, I don't know, that was a terrible idea. And they're like, we were all talking about that. And I was like, nobody said anything. They're like, well, you sounded like you were very sure. I was like, I'm a confident person. Everything that comes out of my mouth sounds like I know what I'm talking about. That doesn't mean I'm right. In fact, most of the time I'm probably sure that unless I'm doing coaching stuff, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just spitballing. Like we should do this. This sounds fun. So I have Amy on the team and she's really helpful. I also have two other barometers. One is our buzz plan, which is how we teach other people to engage your Facebook group, how we engage Boss Mom, how we teach people to promote anywhere you are is a buzz building, which is, there's a book called The Creative Curve, and it talks about this scale from familiar to novel, right? So it's why the Beatles were big. It's why, Nike's big. It's like why these brands or these one-hit wonders or whatever it is. And it's this familiar to novel. And what you have to do is you have to get it familiar enough that the mass audience, not just the novel people who want it to get it because it's novel. And they're like the people that drank at Starbucks, but as soon as it got big, shunned it for being big, right? Not those people, but the masses of people who, when they see something, the primal instinct goes, there might be a bear in that cave. I'm not going to go in. We have to create familiarity so that they go, oh no, I'm comfortable with that. I've heard about that. I know it. So it's our job to create buzz, which makes them familiar with the topic and aware, right? Familiar with the existence of it and top of mind, so that when you start, you come out and say, I've got this thing that I want to sell. They go, I've been thinking about that. How did you know I've been thinking about that? And I've been hearing your name everywhere, right? So that has helped me in the buzz. Part of it is market research, is asking questions. Right. And that's been really helpful, because instead of me just going, I've got an idea, we should execute it. Part of the process is I have to go out and find out, like, one person told me they wanted that, but how much of the actual audience said they want that, right? Like I've had a client go, one person said that I email too much. So can we cut our emails in half? And I was like, yeah, you've got 5,000 people on your email list, honey. One person does not mean change your whole system. So right. I do think the buzz helps. And then the third thing is, one of my criteria when I did we always do planning based on environmental, financial, and emotional. What are the three things you want in those areas? So environmental is the space you want to live, the people you want to surround yourself with, those kinds of things. And the emotional is, do you want to feel invigorated, or do you want to feel calm? Do you want to feel empowered, or do you want to, whatever those are. And then financial is obviously what most people start with. Well, for me, when I did that exercise, one of the things environmentally that I wanted is every single week of my life, I wanted to talk to one person that was behind me, one person that was in proximity to me, and one person that was ahead of me. So the person behind me can make me feel like I'm valuable and I have things to say that are impactful. The person in proximity gives me a different perspective to where I'm at, because they see things differently. And the person ahead of me gives me hope and inspiration to get better. And so those things too has helped just in those three kinds of conversations, which having the podcast and then being interviewed helps with that, is it allows me to not rush into things, because once I have other conversations, it gives me this different perspective, and I can sit back and go, let me think about that. Or, oh my gosh, everybody just said, I brought it from the idea that I have in my head, and that idea is now hyper validated. Or I start to question it. And if it's not hyper validated by everything I do for the next 30 days, then it's not a good enough yes to do it.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. So first of all, I can just tell you are one bright cookie. Not that I didn't think you were before, but it sounds like you read.
Let it be known I'm drinking wine while we're having this conversation.
Let it be known there is no judgment from this end.
Hey, I lived in France for a whole year where drinking during having a glass of wine at lunch was very standard, because I don't drink at night. I have kids. So there's not even time to have a glass of wine. I don't sit down to a dinner. I'm a single parent, right? So it's me, a glass at lunch it to me is really relaxing. It's really nice. I don't think I've been drunk since I was pregnant with my son, so except for this one time in Maine at an event, but that was not my fault.
It never is.
My brother was there. I hadn't seen him in like a year, and he came out and we were like, let's just stay out as late as we can because I only get to see you for 24 hours. And we both woke up and we were like, we were way too old to be up till 3 a.m.
But it was worth it, right? Okay, well, now I want to go in a different direction. I was going to ask you about how much you do read. And it sounds like books play a huge role in your life and just professional development in general, maybe. Do you feel
there's a couple things. So it's so funny because I have this argument all the time. So one of my best friends is like a crazy avid reader, right? Reads a book a day. Like, wow. I don't even know how. Yeah. Like maybe not every single day. Oh yeah. It's insane. Like, and my dad's that way. They've just read for so long, and he came from a homeschooled family. His dad was a pastor. There was just a lot of quiet time. And so he was a musician. So he either played the drums, which I don't even know how a parent would allow a child to do that, but play the drums, or he read. So he reads, and I call him my personal Cliffs Notes because I was like, how about you just because he underlines books, and I was like, can I borrow that book you just read? I'm an audio person because I read so much content for my job all day long. I read emails, I spot check copy, like I'm reading sales, like all my clients, part of what I do is help them with their content. So reading a business book, I physically read fiction books. So I listen to a lot of audio stuff, and I listen to it on 2 times speed because I take in it first. So one of my favorite books is Never Split the Difference. And sometimes I'll just put it on and just listen to a chapter like on 2-point speed, just fast. I just want to glean stuff because in my mind, the goal is not to take in everything. The goal is to take in 1 or 2 key things because I'm going to miss everything else anyway. Like my favorite example is you go into a museum. Ultimately, you really can only take in 1 or 2 pieces of art that speak to you. And if you try and take in everything else, you'll get exhausted and you need to take a nap. Your brain can't handle it. So for me, reading isn't about taking it all in. Reading is about finding 1 or 2 nuggets. And then if it's a good enough book where I know there were nuggets I missed, then I go in and I'll reread. So that's why I like listening to them. But the one thing I think I do that is the most helpful for me that isn't reading is I look at what everybody else is doing. I look at what my competitors are doing. I constantly screenshot people's ads.
I do that too.
Sales page. Yeah. In our society, in our membership, we have a whole walkthrough course where I just see like Stu McLaren puts out his thing. And I did like an hour-long dissection of his sales page to be like, I seriously hope he paid his sales rep $1 million or his copywriter $1 million because this sales page is like on point. And I walk them through like Frank Kern, because he's the one of the most amazing common enemy storytelling users I've ever seen. And most people, because I grew up in a writing family, I have a journalism, like my dad was a writer, my mom's a writer, like all those things. I naturally was trained to see some of that. So that's what I mostly do is I look at other people's stuff. And then I start to see how they're using things and what I like or don't like to help me make decisions about what I do or don't like. And then mostly though, outside of books, is if I really like a book, I try and get the person who wrote it on my show. Because I would much rather have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm pretty well indoctrinated into the ClickFunnels community. So we like to use the word hacking. Whereas you take someone else who's super successful, you're like, and you model it, right? Like, what are they doing? What do they do well? Why are they doing it? And something I talk about with my coaching students all the time is like when you're consuming information, when you're not the one creating it, you're consuming it, you have to look at it with 2 hats. One as the true consumer, but one as the observer. Like study, like be a student of other people's success. Don't get the imposter syndrome. Don't get the whatever. Like look at it as aspiration and how can I model this, or what's my version of that, right? I love that. So you've coached, I don't even know, hundreds, thousands of women, tens of thousands indirectly, right? You've worked with a lot of people. Most of the women listening to this podcast are probably in their early stages of starting a freelancing business, or maybe they're still like on the fence, right? Like we've always got like that, oh, do I do it? Do I not do it? Where am I at? So I know you said you weren't necessarily teaching moms to start a business, but that is specifically what I do. And I know you've worked with a lot of women business owners. What are some of the biggest things you see holding people back from being successful?
Well, I definitely think, we had talked about like the idea that we say yes to too much. I think that in the beginning, when you don't know truly which direction you're going, because it's really hard to know
Sure.
it's just hard to know,
like, you don't know what
all
you
of
don't
your
know.
desires. Yeah, exactly. That I think we see every opportunity as equal. And so therefore we go, oh, well, somebody asked me to be on that summit, so I've got to say yes. Because when is another, crazy story. I don't think I've ever actually told this online. And luckily my mom doesn't listen to the podcast because she'd probably kill me. But, my mom, when she married my dad, who she's been my mom and my stepdad just had their 29th anniversary yesterday. And they were high school sweethearts, got separated, went on their own ways. He joined the Navy. She joined the Army. She met my dad. Wow. He was her Morse code teacher in the Army, all these fun things. They came back together. They've been married almost 30 years. And my stepdad's the whole reason I'm, but my mom used to say that my dad, when she was 18 in the Army, asked her to marry him. And she said yes, because she didn't know if anybody else would ever ask. That's it. She told me why. I said, why did you marry dad? Because when you look at them, they were literally the most opposite people that could ever exist, ever. And she just said, I just assumed, I didn't know that anybody else would ask. So I figure I might as well nail this down now, just in case. And I think what we do when we start our businesses or we start anything, when we start relationships or, any of those things, that we say, well, what if an opportunity like this doesn't come along again? Instead of saying, is this opportunity going to an opportunity cost to something better potentially coming along? Is this the best possible use of my time? And having some kind of set of questions to answer that for you. Because I think that's the biggest thing, is we end up going, well, I paid this money to be on this show, and I said yes to these 15 summits, but that means I never got to make that opt-in so I could actually grow my own list. So I've got all this visibility, but then nobody could do anything with me, right? I made this other person this money by me contributing this thing, but now I've never spent time on my own things, or I've been doing one-on-one stuff for so long that, in my mind, everybody's unique, and therefore I can never create something that is scalable. All of these things in our mind are because we take opportunities that we just haven't really assessed whether or not they're good, because we're scared that we don't know what else is going to come along. And I think if we all just sat down and say, the world is full of opportunity, somebody else is going to want to sleep with you, ladies. Somebody else is going to want to sleep with you. That is just a fact of life. And I'm using that as a metaphor, but I love dating analogies because it's so powerful. I'm telling you, somebody else, some other opportunity, if it is, and that's why I love the Essentialism book I'm reading right now, is just validating all of my beliefs, because you need to look at something and say, if it's not a resounding yes, then it needs to be a no. And I haven't done that for a lot of my life. I remember if we were using the dating analogy, I joked that I dated a guy in college who loved wrestling, and he was hot enough for me to like wrestling for 3 months too. And then after those 3 months, I was like, you are not hot enough for me to handle this. But I think now as we get older, we go, wow, I want to do the things that I love and I enjoy, but I'm also scared, and I think that fear is what makes us do things that we end up regretting.
Interesting. So what about fear holding us back from the thing that we know is right? Do you have an instance of that, or of overcoming that when you have felt nervous or afraid? You're such this big name on the internet. I remember seeing you. I'll just be.
I don't feel like a big name on the internet at all, by the way.
You so are to us moms. Come
My
on,
kids
Jana.
on a daily basis ask me to go help them poop. I just don't feel as though there is some sort of.
I will tell you what's been rocking my Corona world lately is that in our school district, the teachers are teaching, but they're uploading it to YouTube, right? So it's not live. They're preparing their lessons and then it's on YouTube. And I have a YouTube show. And every time my kids' lessons are done and it does the checkered board of the next episode, my face is always one of the faces because I'm logged into my account. And now my 8-year-old daughter thinks I am the most famous person on the internet. Mom, it's you. And I'm like, yeah, it is, baby. But anyway, it's so funny. Here's the deal. Can I be super honest with you?
Yeah, fire away.
So you were one of those people that when I first thought about starting my business, for a brief moment, I told myself, someone's already doing it. I'm like, oh, there's someone already talking to moms about business. The limiting belief. Like that's where I was in my life, where I was just like, and I don't know if that's because I'm a millennial and we're told to be these like special snowflakes, right?
No, it's just a natural human thing.
Right. And so how have you maybe had to overcome that in your business? And maybe it's been a long time, because I think our fears and our insecurities completely evolve. Like that's not something I face now. That was something I faced 5 years ago. Now that I don't even think twice about that. Right. But how do you manage your mindset as a business owner, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a couple things. So one is that I haven't had as much problem with the idea of, competition or somebody else who's doing it, because, like there's a comedy club, I think it's maybe in LA. And of course I can't remember the name of it right now. But if you can get into that comedy club and be on that stage, then you are almost guaranteed to have a career in comedy. It's a launch pad, right? It's a launch pad. And to me, what fulfills me most is for somebody to look back and say, Dana, you helped me, like mentoring, like you helped me, like Boss Mom was instrumental to me getting somewhere. That's for some reason, like very ingrained in my self-worth. Like I'd like to think that it's selfless, but it's not. It's completely selfish. Like I get a lot out of it. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
It's fulfilling to know you're helping other people. No, I totally get that.
So to me, I've always been the person that if I'm coaching somebody, I talk about them. I constantly send people business. I was on the news this morning and they said, hey, do you know anybody who has like product-based? I went out and spent half of yesterday finding 3 women and doing all of the legwork to bring them on so that they could get featured on the news this morning too. And I got 30 seconds of time and they got most of the time to do it. And but I'm happy to do that because those 3 women maybe wouldn't have had that visibility because I'm good at connecting. Like I'm good at being visible and finding people and making connections. So to me, the collaboration, and the competition wasn't so hard for me in terms of like, am I competing with people? Because to me, people were always opportunities to make me feel fulfilled. And so therefore people's gains were my gains. And that's just the way my brain worked. Now I'm going to absolutely be 100% honest. There are 100% instances where I look at somebody and we started at the same time and they're at a particular place and I want to go and cry and be like, what's wrong with me? But I also remember I've had calls with friends, some ClickFunnels friends, right? That are in the, have had multi-million dollars and they're doing all these things. But I also realize I've made choices, right? So I'm really
back to your framework, right?
I'm
your decisions.
Really clear on my choices. Yeah. Because they've said, well, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. I mean, I'm so busy, but I'm doing this and this, and then we're traveling here. And I'm like, that's amazing. And they're like, what are you doing? What's going on with you? And I was like, I actually was able to go from 20 hours a week to 15 hours a week working. I'm pretty excited about that. And for me, that's the thing, because my entire goal was right now doing all this work and building this thing. But when my kids hit 10 and they start coming home and asking questions about real life, I don't want their friends and whatever their friends' parents told their kids that they think is true about the world to be how they decide what's real. I want to be the one that is that guiding factor, which means by the time I am, in the next 5 years, I want to be able to theoretically not work barely at all if I don't want to, and be here every day when the kids get home so that I'm the guiding star for them and we can have real experiences together. So for me, growing big was never the thing, but I have to constantly remind myself of that. For me, it's the deal breakers and the dream makers is what we said. And then I said, like every quarter or 6 months, depending on how solid I feel about things, I look at what do I want my environmental, my financial, and my emotional future to look like. And I think the clearer people are on those things, the clearer they can be when they look at somebody else and go, I see why they're different. I see what they're doing. And if you see something that you're like, crap, there's really absolutely looking at everything, no reason I shouldn't be doing that, then start doing that and figuring out how can I do that in a way that makes me feel good and authentic about me. But yeah, for the most part, when we look at other people, you can see why they're different. And if you knew really clearly about yourself and what you wanted, then I don't think it would bother people as much.
That is so good. I love how you brought that filter back that you teach to your coaching students, and how you kind of apply that. And that's your check, right? It's like, you know what? Maybe I could be making what they're making or having the publicity they're having, but what's it going to cost? And everything's either going to cost time or money. And I love that. You have to have such a solid foundation about what you want. That's awesome. So something that we always do here on the Free Mama Radio podcast is give 3 of our best tips based on your area of expertise. Now, you have a lot of those. You mentioned content. I know you're a great marketer. You obviously know how to grow a pretty darn successful Facebook group too. So maybe that's the route you want to go. But I would love for you to offer 3 tips to our listeners to help them grow in business.
Yeah. Okay. So number one, 100%, no matter what, ask more questions than you give training. Always, 100%. I get the most pushback when somebody's like, no, somebody told me I'm supposed to put out good content and teach and tell and teach and tell and show that I'm an expert. I say 100% no to that. That is my personal belief. Like the age of Gary Vee should be over. It should be burnt in a backyard in a bonfire with a bunch of wine. Yes.
We're the anti-hustlers.
Yeah,
I'm like, 100%. I don't want to work hard. I work hard intentionally. Yes. Not hours.
Yes.
Yes.
So 100% stop trying to get on and train everybody. And even from the algorithms online, it just doesn't do anything for you, right? Ask questions. The reason we get 1,000 comments, the reason that people that just joined the group can ask a question in our group and get hundreds of comments, and even in other groups that are much smaller, is because they ask good questions. They ask questions that actually like make people want to answer. They ask questions that people go, I want to stand up and raise my hand to that. I have a client who she does decluttering. But she said, who here wants to be a good declutterer, but doesn't consider themselves a minimalist? 400 plus comments in under 24 hours.
Wow.
Really. And she's got 10,000 people in her group. That's still amazing engagement because it allows people to go, that's me. And it allows people to feel valuable. So I'd say stop trying to train people so much and start asking people questions because they will engage, the algorithms will love you, all those things. The second thing I would say is stop trying to, and this is not my quote, and I don't remember who said it, but stop trying to say different things to the same people and start saying the same thing to different people, right? So one of the first things we train people on is how to hone in on your key opinions in your industry, key opinions in life, right? And your key opinions in strategy and tactics and things that you do, right? Because though instead of saying a million different things and always have something different to say, which we have this natural thought that like everything always has to be unique and different. No, the people who are famous, the idea that like somebody should actually make fun of the phrase that you say all the time until they're laughing at that phrase that's, it's like, oh yeah, well that's, Lauren. Lauren.
There's
always
Laurenisms in my
like,
Facebook group.
Classic Lauren. Like until somebody says that, you haven't said it enough.
I love that.
So I think what people yearn to do is give too much of different things, thinking I've got to have a new blog, I've got to have a new whatever. And if you actually looked at the span of all of your content, you would realize it's extremely diverse and actually confusing the market as to what exactly you care about or what you do. Pick 2 or 3 key distinctive opinions. I mean, people message me and they go, Dana, I literally said to somebody the other day, you can't cry out your intelligence, right? And being emotional is not a problem. Like me going crying 1 hour because my kid was a jerk face and then me hopping on and being smart. Those things are totally possible. You cannot cry out your intelligence, right? Like those kind of things. But if I was just saying new things all the time, willy-nilly, and I had no key opinions that were framed around my belief system, and then my products were validated by that belief system, then you just confuse everybody. So I think the ask more questions, ask better questions, and start having key opinions, and then making sure that those things are framed around the actual things that you sell, not the content you make, but the actual things that you sell. And then everybody would, we'd all be happy and there'd be like double rainbows, unicorns, I assume.
Wine for lunch every day.
Wine for lunch every day. I mean, come on. Our kids would nap when they're supposed to.
Oh man, wouldn't that be a blessing? All right, you got
they put on shoes without complaining.
Oh man, I'm kind of past that, but I got a 3-year-old who's up and coming, so I'm sure that I will face that again. You got a third tip for us?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I would say the third thing is to not try, and we were talking about the opportunities, right? Is to not make so many things that people make no decision with you. Like that's the thing. What people often do is they say, you know what? I'm going to add a ton of value. I'm going to have a ton of options. I'm going to be a ton of things because I want everybody to have choices. If you've ever given your kid like a million choices, they don't know what to do with it. And often then they make the choice that just pisses you off, right?
Yeah.
Stop doing that. Yeah. Start narrowing down, simplifying what you offer. More is not better. Like prune things down and give them like the simplified thing. Like what I tell people, I just did a podcast episode that's coming out in a couple of weeks about this. That just basically says, stop trying to add value by giving more. right? Add value by simplifying. People buy simple. People buy things that make their life easier. They don't buy things that make their life overwhelming, right? If you want to get people results and you want to get good testimonials and you want to make great money, start to simplify. If you can't draw what your methodology is on a napkin, then it's too complex.
I love it. I love it so much. All right. I got one last question for you.
Yes.
So as you talked about maturing and evolving and finding your voice and your mission, the mission at the Free Mama is to make sure no mother has to choose between family and financial stability, thus teaching women how to be self-employed, right? So knowing what our mission is and knowing that a lot of our listeners are in that startup phase of starting their own service-based business online, what is one final piece of advice, maybe something you haven't gotten to talk about today that you would like to leave those listeners with?
Yeah. So what I think we want to be all things. Like, remember at the beginning, I was saying we all want to say yes to everything. We think in our mind, I need to be all things, because then that somehow makes me whole or validates me, whatever that is. Being an island is not helpful. Being an island is overwhelming and it drains your cup, and you cannot fill up other things if you have an empty cup, as one says. So I would tell everybody that this idea that doing it all on your own and being a good salesperson and being a good copywriter and being a good social media manager and being a good, coach and being a good content creator and all of those things is we've come into some kind of era where we think solopreneur is like a cool thing. Do not seek to be a solopreneur, right? Seek to be a business owner. And a business owner allows people to fulfill the thing they're great at and to give you space to do the thing you're great at. If you spent 1 hour a day doing the thing that you are truly good at, that you could finish in 15 minutes when it takes somebody else 5 hours, you will make exponentially more money. And you will be sought after so much more than if you try to be all of the parts in your business. So the sooner you can start to push those out, and you do barters, do trades, do internship, do whatever you need to do. I did a ton of that in the beginning, right? Do what you need to do, because you doing everything does not help anybody.
I love that so much. Well, Dana, you mentioned your podcast, you mentioned your books, you mentioned obviously your Facebook group. We will link to all of that stuff in the show notes so that anybody who's not already one of the 50,000 people inside of your community can come follow you and join you. But thank you so much for your time today. Enjoy that glass of wine. You deserve it.
Oh, why, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Free Mama Radio. Don't forget to check out Free Mama TV right here on YouTube for hundreds of how-to videos and interviews to help you start, grow, and scale a virtual business from home. If you want to join a community of tens of thousands of moms just like you, make sure you join the Free Mama Movement group over on Facebook. And lastly, if you want to learn more about how we can do this together, work to achieve your goals, and make you our next success story, check out my free training at thefreemamamovement.com. I'll see you next time.